we're going to be going through the power of the binding magic of the trees and the discovery of Tribal Island and Kayna atop it. The Kayna on Tribal Island is our only monster inside of the monster world who actually knows the events behind the cataclysm and exactly what happened inside of the Dawn of Fire era. Every single monster pretty much besides Tribal Island Kayna cannot remember a single thing about the Dawn of Fire period at all. All of the Celestials' memories have disappeared, even though there's only one of each Celestial in terms of the lore. We know that each one's memories were actually taken away when they were woken up from the statues and revived. And we also know that the Colossals have been in a very deep state of slumber and haven't been able to recall on any of the events from the Dawn of Fire, seen as though they've been in that slumber. So the Colossals could have the ability to recount upon the events of the Dawn of Fire, but considering as well how the Colossals' singing abilities have been taken away, it's also possible that they wouldn't even be able to even after revival. So Tribal Island Kayna is a very important centerpiece behind the Mycenae Monsters lore. Despite it being able to recollect on its memories though, Tribal Island Kayna can only remember on certain things. If we head on over to Tribal Island Kayna's bio, it actually states that Tribal Island Kayna's memory is foggy. And to link back to this as well, if we go on over to Dawn of Fire is a recollection of all of Tribal Island Kayna's memories. Every single thing from Dawn of Fire links back to Tribal Island Kayna, and that's actually why we see Tribal Island Kayna often discover the cave paintings upon a monster's release inside of the Dawn of Fire era, as those cave paintings are the actual reason why these monsters are able to be discovered in the first place, as the Golden Era, in the form that we see it, is just essentially all of Kayna's memories. Whether there's more behind it, that remains to be told. That's completely possible, as we are only seeing one perspective here. Everything from the Dawn of Fire inside of the current period too, whether it's from the living core or even the crystals that Kayna showed them, all of these things from the Dawn of Fire that have been discovered have all been thanks to Tribal Island Kayna too. So we know that Tribal Island Kayna's memory is a bit foggy, but why on earth is it foggy in the first place? The reason why Tribal Island Kayna's memory is foggy has been confirmed to be thanks to the amber surrounding it. The amber surrounding it is sap from the Stabilo Majorica, the world tree behind Mycenae Monsters. Sap means that it's fluid from the world tree itself, and therefore amber is essentially the substance that comes from the inner workings of the world tree. Unlike the seeds that come with the great tree inside of the Thumpisverse and the tall tree from Thingia, this is an actual substance of the tree. It's the inner workings of it, and this is quite an interesting substance too, guys, as the amber surrounding Kayna has been described to have the potential to take away the memories of the thing inside it, and that's actually why Kayna can't remember a single thing. Seeing as though the amber is constantly reinforced onto them, it's the case that Kayna's memories pretty much just fade away instantly, and it's very hard for them to recollect on things. We've seen amber before with the Shard Mountains of Thingia quite notably, where we have things like Hamster Cannon and Eye Oracle, games from the Big Blue Bubble multiverse along the world tree, all sat inside of the amber amongst the area. And last but not least, we have Flutter, who was also quite an important figure in us being able to work out what's going on with Kayna here. According to Flutter's bio, the process of putting amber around a monster is called the binding of the trees. This callback is absolutely amazing too, guys, I've got to say, as this was put in years before the reveal of the world tree, so they really do know what they're doing with the lore. Now, unlike Kayna though, it's important to mention that Flutter isn't affected in the same way as Kayna, as the amber isn't repeatedly put around them like it is for Tribal Island Kayna. For Tribal Island Kayna, the difference is that a force, apparently it's been confirmed, repeatedly places the amber around them.
The reason that the amber reforms is that some force, nefarious or otherwise, is trying to make sure that Kayna's secrets remain just those, secrets.
Now, a force, you say? I'm sure it sounds very familiar to you guys, as the force is a term that we often use to describe what caused the cataclysm in the first place, as we refer to it as the destructive force. So, seen as the force isn't really a thing that's used inside of the Mycenae Monsters terminology that much, I think we can absolutely link those two terms together, and it's my theory that those two things might be the exact same thing that are causing these things. things. So whatever caused the cataclysm is likely causing the binding magic of the trees onto Tribal Island Kayna. So if these two forces are the exact same, we've got to try and sew them together now and work out the exact specifics behind why they would do this. Why would something or someone want to hide Tribal Island Kayna's memories and keep inflicting the binding magic of the trees? Well, it's quite obvious that they are doing this for only one reason, and the reasoning is what the Amber does in the first place, to make Kayna forget whatever happened inside of the Dawn of Fire period. Clearly, I would presume that if this is the same force in act here, that they are trying to prevent Tribal Island Kayna on recalling on what happened inside of the Cataclysm itself. If we go back to the Tribal Island bio as well, it references how this extraordinary new realm just sprang into existence. And if we go back to the official lore that we know of too, we know that Tribal Island first emerged thanks to an ancient prophecy being fulfilled.
Tribal Island spontaneously came into being. There wasn't much warning to prepare us for it. It represents the fulfillment of some ancient prophecy.
Now, I don't think this prophecy is the exact same one as what we encountered on our previous episode, and it's actually one that I do think we're going to have to get into a little bit later. But that's besides the point, as what I want you guys to take away from that is Tribal Island was hidden away from the contemporary era until this prophecy was fulfilled. So something must have purposefully tried to hide the Tribal Island Colossal. Whether this was to hide Tribal Island Kayna even further to prevent any monster trying to break Kayna out of the Amber like all of the monsters do with all of the musical potential that they build upon Tribal Island, I think is absolutely the case. They went out of the way not just to make Kayna forget the memories so that the monsters wouldn't ever be able to find out what happened, but they also put Tribal Island deep under the sea. And we've also got to talk about the Colossals' singing abilities too once more. The Colossals are unable to communicate because the singing powers were took away. Was this also done to keep this secret? If the Colossals can still recall on the Dawn of Fire, then it could absolutely be. But what on earth could this secret be behind what caused the cataclysm? Well, Tribal Island Kayna was first placed in Amber when the cataclysm occurred. So therefore, I do want to point out too before we continue that since Tribal Island Kayna was placed in Amber when the cataclysm happened, it's just undeniable all of the connections here that something is trying to keep this secret. And seeing as though we know too from our first episode that the very root of what caused the cataclysm to occur in the first place is the dwindling of teleportation energy, I've got to say that I think the secret is what's causing this dwindling of the teleportation energy. But for why Kayna can't remember, and why this catalyst behind this cataclysm or villain, whatever you want to call it, is causing these effects, there's got to be a reason why. And I think we've got to go really deep into this, guys, to truly understand the situation, because if the cataclysm caused dimensional accessibility, then I think tying it all back together, this secret is being kept to maintain that dimensional instability that the catalyst set out to do in causing the cataclysm. It's my theory that the catalyst, the villain, wanted to get to another dimension and purposefully, or accidentally, please be purposefully, it's gotta be because it'd be way cooler, caused the cataclysm and all of the effects that we know that came from the continent. Imagine all of the possibilities from this though. Imagine if the Colossals didn't allow that access, then they went and did this because of the Colossals and went against them. That would be such an epic story to tell. We know that the Colossals all have the ability to access the different dimensions inside of the Dawn of Fire period, so I think this solution is honestly a pretty likely one, as the Colossals were the only ones who were able to tap into these different dimensions, like the Pocket Dimension that they did all the experiments in, and there's no confirmation behind anyone else being able to access them, so maybe this could be how they're involved in this. Or maybe the Colossals weren't involved at all, and they could go, but they just chose not to, and for some reason, they were forced into this situation. It could even be the case that this was their home dimension, and then they somehow ended up in the prime reality, and then they had to do this in order to get back to their home. There's just so many options with this. And maybe going back to our first theory too, why would the Colossals not want them to go? What kind of reason could prevent the Colossals from doing this? If they are a species that was trying to get home, what would cause the Colossals not to want to help? Did they not have the power to? These are the beings that created the monster world. They're one of the very first things that came out of it, and honestly, I don't think it would be the case that they wouldn't be able to tap into whatever dimension they were trying to get to. So, harkening it back to why the Colossals wouldn't want to, there's got to have been a reason why they didn't want this force to go wherever they wanted to. What was this force trying to achieve in going there? Just so many questions. But most importantly of all, where would they want to go in the first place? We're gonna have to go deeper next time, guys, as we look into a colourful and spectral dimension we have yet to discuss about on the channel in detail.